Wow, who would have thought that it would be such a busy place? Hi, I'm Nigel again, and this is the very famous site of Khok. We're down here on the bank. You can see, if we come down over in this direction, we can see the prawn farms and things around on this flat land around Khok. But the site is up in front of me, and we can come up this road. This is the same road that Charles Hyam and his team came up in 1984 when they were doing the excavations here. Charles Hyam and Rachini Tossarat. And you can see that we come to a very clear mound, and there's this track coming up to the mound, and it comes up to this very steep sided hill. You can see how steep it is over there, but as we come up here, and we'll see all the dogs again too, lots of dogs barking at me. You can see as we come up the hill just how steep it is, and we can see that the bank, if we look over here, we can see it goes almost straight up in the air. Right. And you can see as we come through, what Charles Hyam and his team found was that this bank, as it comes higher and higher, quite sandy. We can see behind me just how high up we are now, and we can see all these layers and lots of layers in this bank over here. It's a bit dark perhaps today. You can see all these layers over here. That's all archaeological deposits, and what they found was that was full of pottery sherds. And this big bank, which is now concrete on the right hand side, on the left hand side you can still see the original form. It rises up where that tree is, and then back down again. As we come into the main part of the site, we can see that it's actually a bit of a depression that we come into. And that bank was full of pottery sherds, and what Charles Hyam and his team found was that that was really all pottery sherds, discarded pottery sherds, filling up much of that rim around this basin on the top of the hill. We come past the Wat, see how beautiful that is. Lovely temple here, and the whole grounds of this site is a Buddhist Wat today. Okay. Beautiful place, but we can see down here that it drops down into a basin on the inside. Quite a few buildings here still. And so a shallow sort of basin on the inside, and that caused some big problems for their excavations. I remember in lectures Charles telling us about the problems they had because they started excavating here, and they ended up having to go down 7 meters deep to get to the base of the site, and spending several more months than they expected on this excavation. And so they entered the rainy season, so they had to build a roof over the site and then drains to make sure the water drained away from the site rather than going down into the site. You can see these buildings over here. These are the rather grand buildings for the new museum that's being developed here. Still hasn't been completed, it appears, but it does look like quite a cool structure, so we'll hope that that is completed sometime soon. I'm not sure if we can go into it. But here we can see how much of a basin there is in this site. So the main excavation was, I think, over in this building on the left here, and that's what will be turned into an open site museum in the near future. And some information about the site. And we can go right across the site, so we can see, get a sense of how big it is. Go right across the mound, get to the other side over here. And we can see it dropping away again here behind the toilets. There's the toilet station, the toilets there, another track going down the hill again, this time not with a big cutting. And the ground is somewhat higher on this side as well, you can see around, so maybe it's just not as built up perhaps. So it's a fantastic site. So it was occupied between about 2000 and 1500 BC, so it's a Neolithic site. Neolithic sites are relatively rare. in Thailand, so that's important. It's even though it's some distance from the sea today, it was a coastal site at the time that it was being occupied, or very close to the coast. Lots of mangrove swamps and those sorts of things around it. Over the 500 years it was occupied, it did change somewhat. In the environment around it changed somewhat. And there's still a bit of debate about exactly how that happened, but essentially the rivers probably silted up a little bit. It became sort of cut off from the ocean, then it became more closer to the ocean again. So some changes in their local environment around the site through the time it was occupied. And then about 1500 BC it appears to have been abandoned. Perhaps it just became too far from the ocean at that point for that same sort of current lifestyle. But that's about the time that the Neolithic people, the Neolithic communities were starting to settle. So perhaps the people of Khok Phanom D, it's hard to say whether they were Neolithic, early Neolithic people, these early farmers who were coming into the area and beginning that transformation into a farming economy, or if rather they were the sort of leftovers from the early coastal expansion, and then maybe they had contact with those early Neolithic farmers that were coming in and settling in that same sort of time period, and certainly by about 1500 BC were settling across much of Thailand and Southeast Asia. So it's an interesting place today, and absolutely fascinating, and a really important part of the story of prehistoric Thailand, and one of the great sites that Charles Hyman and his teams have excavated over the years. A huge part of the history of archaeology in Southeast Asia, as much as the actual, telling us about the prehistory itself. That's about all. I'm going to stop there for now. Beautiful big trees.